Okay. So you were talking about purpose statement problem solution with your group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you were connecting to previous learning, posing some questions and checking fluency with the kiddos while they were reading. And they were answering questions individually and through the turn and talk, reading orally. One of the things that you had, Caleb, that I really appreciated was reviewing those previous events from the reading. Anytime you can circle back to that, especially because that's a struggling group of readers.
Yeah.
Just to connect for that comprehension piece. That was a nice piece there. Recaps kind of sets their comprehension before going on to the next day's lessons. And throughout the lesson, you provided multiple opportunities for the kids to talk. You had some individual response, kind of some call and response, but then some turn and talk opportunities as well.
Yeah.
So I know that was one of the things you talked a little bit about, trying to get more student voice.
Mm-hmm. That's my Marzano focus, is the student answer, more involvement with answers.
Okay. So talk to me about that then. And I know we're going to do more of that later, what are you trying to do specifically at this point? Through your planning or?
The main was, is I've kind of combined the increasing student involvement with the physical movement.
Okay.
So my goal is to use the like strategies and that they have for involvement with like the Kagan structures that I already use in the classroom.
Okay.
And so they had like, one of them was like response chaining, where like I call on one student and they give their answer, and then it like chains to another, like, okay, is that person right or wrong, why or why not,
Okay.
and then just kind of going off that. And then I want to tie in as well the talk moves with when they're doing the response chaining. Okay, this is my answer because of this. Kind of like at the meeting this morning when we were talking about that, a lot of our kids, the biggest question they struggle on the PRA is where they like cite the text evidence and say this is the main idea because of this, or this is the author's purpose because of this. Which sentence out of these four goes with that the best and why? So I think that.
So have you had a chance to explicitly teach those talk moves yet, or that's next step for you as you try to?
So we've gone over the talk moves because they are all familiar with them from second grade, and the ones that haven't, like Jessica and Richard, I've kind of just talked about like I just kind of built, because I haven't had training with it. I just built it up as like, this is just a better way to tell me what your thinking is, and just kind of a better way to argue a point that we're talking about. And then so my next step is adding in that response chaining, and we haven't done it yet, but we've talked about, okay, after one person answers, if you have something to add on to that, that's because we already do that with our discussions. Is once someone answers, there's already like, oh, I agree with them.
Mm-hmm.
We already have those conversations. So now it's like kind of tying it with, okay, why do you agree with them? Why do you disagree with them? And just building
using
on that.
evidence to support your thinking.
Yeah, and
okay.
Just building on kind of what we've already been doing.
Okay. So do they do like the I agree and some of the nonverbal things too, or are you focused more on just that conversation?
So they just use the talk moves mainly is the two big ones that I've tried to kind of stress the most are I agree or I disagree because, and then some of them like Blessing and Jasmine, their teacher last year told them that they should say I respectfully agree or I respectfully disagree, so they use that all the time.
Good.
But I've just been the because part is the biggest thing for me, because my higher kids are pretty good with that, but my lower kids will just say like I agree, but then not really sure. Okay, why do I agree?
Mm-hmm.
Like I know that's what I think, but why?
What's the thinking behind
Yeah,
it? Perfect.
So that's the big stress for me right now, is getting that going more.
So because we'll switch here soon, probably. I'm talking with Aaron.
Okay.
This is typically about the time of the year we
Mm-hmm.
switch. But as we work into coaching some of those elements from Marzano, that really focusing on that response chaining might be next steps where we want to talk about with her.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, because it'll be it's more of like, I think for me is going to be the harder part is just going to be making it become a habit, and making me use it, because until something's really like when I'm up there teaching, a lot of times if I'm not specifically thinking like I need to say this, then I'm just gonna forget to say it. So I need to make that a habit and incorporate it in more lessons.
Well, that is pretty common. That's what a lot of when we went through this last year, and that's where you've got to really decide what organizational system is going to work best for you. For example, some of the teachers would put If they're always back here, they would put the sentence frames on this
Okay.
back wall, so as I'm up and I'm teaching, it's a visual reminder
Okay.
for me all the time. Some of them would talk about how they would jot down in their lesson plans, this is where I want to use this, until it becomes more of a natural flow of I'm just embedding it all the time. Some of the teachers, one or two would tape some of them down on their back kidney table, so as they're,
So with the
this is where I
small
do a lot of
groups.
small group instruction was just a visual reminder to keep embedding them into the conversation. So there's no right or wrong way. Obviously, it's just what's a system that's going to work best for
Works,
you,
yeah.
and what might that look like.
Okay.
Okay. So one of the things I want to talk a little bit about is what are your thoughts about maybe embedding some more choral and closed reading opportunities with some of that small group instruction?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I started I've always struggled with small group, like not really sure what exactly to do.
Okay.
And last year, my IDS pointed out that like if I do popcorn reading, like when this person's reading, these are they can look like they're reading, but they might not be.
Right.
And so we talked about of adding in like the choral reading. The only thing I'm not sure about with that is with my low group that you observed, like with like Immaculate, like she doesn't read. What do I pair her with someone and have like if Sophie's reading with her, Sophie does all the reading and Immaculate is just listening, or what does that look like?
No,
What's the right? I don't know how to handle that.
Well, I think a combination of different things is what I would use with
Okay.
her. And one, I would say a lot of paired reading. I would mix it up so it's not the same thing every day anyway, because you'll get bored. They'll get bored of it. But if you're doing close reading with them, where you're just going to read, especially if you think it's the first time through, and they're going to really structure some of the text, and then you're just pausing and then filling in the word, because first you just want them tracking the text along with you. But then I would even just say we're all chorally reading that text along with each other the whole time. Even if she's not picking up on each word, you can be helping her track. If she's the one you're specifically worried about, the rest of them are tracking on their own. So maybe you're leaning over with Immaculate and you're kind of guiding her through as we're all chorally reading. And then she's got that opportunity, she's hearing you read it, she's got access to that, because otherwise my concern would be the same, as we're kind of pulling herself out of that and either waiting for my one turn to read or not getting those multiple exposures to text. I still can appreciate wanting to hear them read individually though. So one of the things you might think about, take like the first 2 minutes a group with them every day and go back and have them reread for 1 to 2 minutes, right? So here's the 4 pages we read yesterday in group. Go back and reread this, I'm setting the timer, boom, go. While they're doing that, you can lean in real quickly and listen to each of them whisper read to you real quickly, so it still gives you a chance to hear them read individually.
Okay.
You get a chance to provide some quick feedback if there's something they're struggling with, a part of that, and bounce around. Or maybe you want to say, I'm going to listen to you two today, you two tomorrow, and I'm going to bounce back and forth every other day. Kind of depends on how much of that group time you want to dedicate to that.
Yeah.
That still gives you the chance to give them feedback and listen to them read on an individual basis, which I'm sure you're doing anyway with progress monitoring.
Yeah.
But doing more of the closed reading or the choral reading with them together gives everybody more practice with the text itself.
Yeah, because in whole group I've been doing close read, choral read, and then partner read.
Good.
And then like we'll group back up. And then with her, like she just, she's in that pod and she's like hearing everyone around her. I just didn't, like, she's a sweet girl. I don't want to embarrass her. You know what I mean? Like, because everyone in my group is low, but they're so much higher than where she's at.
Okay.
And so I just didn't know how to handle that, I guess.
I think as long as she's, picking that up and she's reading with them along the way, that's
she's
probably going to
getting-
be more supportive than having to worry about the,
Yeah, because she's getting better. Like she can do
on.
like certain sight words where she can read them.
Okay.
But like the decode, there's not much there for decoding yet.
Okay. Well, then as a newcomer, you're kind of looking at her as an exposure kiddo anyway, and just hearing the language and getting a chance to talk about it, and hearing her peers read it. So I would view it as that way. But for the others in the group, that's going to give, the more opportunities we give them to practice reading the text, the more the fluency is going to improve. So that was just one of the things I was wondering about that a little bit. And then, like I said, if you still want to hear them read, like the first minute or two the next day, go back and have them do, then now that you've got a hot read at that point. All right, we read these pages yesterday, go back and reread. It ties in well with what you did anyway, Caleb, with starting with talking about some of the comprehension. What happened yesterday? You could even set the purpose. Hey, reread these 2 pages that we did yesterday and be thinking about what happened so we can talk about it to start. So while they're rereading, you're checking in with 1 or 2 kids, just listening to read. Okay, boom, now let's restart. And then you can go into today's, cold read where we're doing more of a choral read or close read, something.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then as far as when, like I guess when they're reading, how do you, like what advice do you have as far as switching their mindset from, like when they read, they're focusing solely on like, okay, what is this word?
Mm-hmm.
How do I read it?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you focus that to like doing that, but also like thinking about the text? Because that's a big problem I've noticed is like when I listen to Sophie read, like she'll take the time to like try to decode every word and read it, but then when she's done, like even if it's a sentence, I'll be like, okay, what was in that sentence? Like, no idea, because she spent so much energy.
All the energy's on the decoding.
Yeah. So how do you get how do you teach to get a balance there?
So I would say, first step is think about what your focus is. If you're really wanting to hit the comprehension portion first, I would be more you're reading aloud or they're echo reading, so that the energy isn't spent on the decoding, it's on getting through the text, and then you're doing a lot more think alouds and talking it through, and this is what's going through my head as I'm reading it. Now let me read this page aloud, be thinking about this question, setting the focus for them so they're focused on that as opposed to the decoding. And then I would just shift the focus, say, okay, right now we're just going to work on the decoding part right now. I don't want you to worry about the comprehension portion. This is where we're really going to work on applying the word sort skills that we've done. That was the only other question I had, was whether you've had a chance to kind of take some of the word work rules and apply them to some of the text that they're going through with you.
I have with my middle group a lot,
Okay.
because they're working on like the long and short vowel sounds. My low group, like Sophie and Immaculate's list this week is like SP, like the beginning of the words. Does it start with an S, does it start with a P, or an SP?
Okay.
And so with that, I haven't really done, because their lists right now are pretty easy for them because they're noticing those beginning letters. So I just haven't really tied that in.
So you might talk to second grade a little bit,
Okay.
because I think one of the things they've done, they don't necessarily do the word sorts. They're tying it more out of Super Kids, but I think they found text that aligns to some of the sorts that they're working on.
Okay.
They're shorter passages, so you might, not for everybody, but just for that low group, giving them the chance to transition from the skill you're working on to generalizing and applying that rule to other words in text. So that could even be the portion of some of your small group work where we're really going to hit the coding and the word work. And
pointing out that this is your word sort.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, helping them identify, even given the passage, go highlight 3 words in here that are spelling patterns this week. That's when the power from the word sorts transitions to, oh, I can decode this word because I know these rules and we've practiced this.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. So the only other question I had, Caleb, was the comprehension. So you're working on problem solution. How are you going to continue to monitor that through the week? What does that look like? Because I hear you talking a little bit about comprehension.
So like we'll do, like with just small group, we do a lot of the turn and talk, and like they'll talk to their partner, and then we'll group back up and like share the ideas. We do that a lot in our whole group, or we'll do like a mixed pair share where they're talking to each other.
Okay.
And then as grade level, we had kind of just started the conversation of like, okay, for this next unit, like what are the common formative assessments we need to do? And I had talked to Aaron.
For one priority standard that the 3 of you have identified?
Well, so Janice was gone, but when Karen and I were here on Friday, we picked 2 of the priority standards that we saw in the unit in that end of the unit test.
Okay.
And had a couple ideas for FAs off of that.
Good.
But we just kind of had a couple ideas. We need to finalize it and talk to Janice a little bit about that and what the plans are. I was wondering if I do, so like with the common FAs, like last year we would do an FA every Friday on just the skill that we were doing, and it was just like I was the only person teaching reading, and I did the 2 classes. Mm-hmm. So do you want them to be like the FAs that I'm doing, like all 3 of us are doing, or or do we just decide like, okay, this week we want to do an FA on like point of view, or this week we want to do an FA on ask and answer questions, and then we do our own and then compare them?
I mean, ultimately,
Should,
we'd
like-
be doing the same one.
Should they all be the same, or?
Ideally, and
Okay.
because otherwise it's going to be difficult for the three of you to have conversations about,
Yeah.
I noticed this, if the format's different, or we're looking at different things. You're at the point where you've got experience doing it every week, so that's more comfortable for you. For everybody else, this is going to be pretty new in terms of thinking some of those things. So even if you get to the point where every other week you know, the team had something. I mean, if they're ready to go and you guys are saying every Friday we're comfortable doing this, that's one thing.
But at the same, like, I don't want to.
But if they're not ready
Push
for that, I
work
don't want
on-
to
yeah.
overwhelm.
So, can, like, if I just get back in the groove with what I was doing last year,
Mhm.
can I do that every Friday?
You
And
can
then,
always
like,
do what you want.
I mean, just I have that data on the side, and then I'll plug in. Some weeks we'll do our common FA.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just-
that's perfect.
Okay.
And then because you could always say, so we've agreed to do this every other week, or you know, whatever it is that you know, or as a team, I'm going to be doing them every Friday. So if you guys are interested, you want to see what I've got, just because I've got
Okay.
experience doing that, let me share that with you. Use it or don't. I
Okay.
know as a team we've agreed that every other week we're going to look at this. I'm just going to do it more frequently because I have experience with that. So if you're
Good,
interested
yeah.
at some point, let me know and we can talk about that. But I don't want anybody to.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing with progress monitoring. I'm doing
Okay.
the whole because last year I progress monitored. My teaching partner and I, we wanted to do the whole class.
Okay.
So we did the whole class just because I like having that at conferences, even with my high kids, just say, look, this is the growth we're making. You know, it's nice to have that graph to
Mhm.
show to parents.
Well, and it's nice to. I mean, we want all of the kids making growth, not just the ones who.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know
But
what I
you
mean?
have
Just
that
having
piece.
that visual just to talk about and show.
Yep.
So, okay.
Perfect. Okay. So I will, because Erin and I always chat like what's next steps as we switch. So I'll talk to her about that. You really want to kind of start to work on that response chain, and that.
And then there was
makes
one-
sense anyway.
I wrote it down. I can't remember what the other one was called. It was response chaining and paired response.
Okay.
So then they can, for the paired response, the students discuss a question, and then you call on a pair to answer, and then either one can verbalize or both can. So then at least if I call on a kid or a student, they've had both have had a chance to talk about it. It's kind of like that mixed pair share where everyone, even if I only call on a couple kids, like everyone has a chance to talk about it.
Yeah. They both had a chance to go close.
Yeah.
For somebody's responsible. Call.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Perfect.
So those are two I picked. And then since I'm doing this with physical movement, do I need to pick stuff for physical movement, or can I just like tie this in with the CAG?
I think I would just tie it in with.
Okay.
Really, just having the one focus.
Okay, that's
Um,
fine. I just didn't know if
Yep.
I had to have one for each or something.
No.
Okay.
And we're all kind of learning together. So,
All right. Hey,
yeah.
that works.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Caleb.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you're
it.
welcome.